next speaker for this evening is Katie Urban, and she, I think, is the person that's come the furthest. She's from London. Her talk title is How Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia Helped Shape the 1920s and 30s Culture. Katie is equal parts archaeologist and museologist. She holds an MA in Museum Studies from the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom, where she focused her research on interpretation within exhibitions of archaeological materials. Currently, she is the education coordinator at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology in London, Ontario. Quick fact: one saw 8 of 9 major sites in London, UK, and a 3-hour whirlwind tour during a layover in Heathrow Airport. I think that's pretty impressive. Everyone, please welcome Katie.
All right, thank you. So everyone knows my Twitter is @museumcat. How Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia came to shape the culture of pop culture of the 1920s and 30s. It all starts with archaeology and the It also starts with archaeology as far as popularity in the early 20th century. Heinrich Schliemann had discovered Homeric Troy at Mycenae in the late 19th century, and so when Howard Carter, this gentleman here, discovered the nearly complete tomb of King Tutankhamun in 1922, the public interest exploded. The British press covered the opening of the tomb with dramatic and romanticized flair, so the wonderful gold and jewel-encrusted contents of the tomb became what everyone desired. 1922 was also the year another British archaeologist, Sir Leonard Woolley, discovered the Mesopotamian site of Ur in Iraq. This site was linked with the biblical birthplace of Abraham. Although there is no archaeological evidence of this, it became almost as popular with riches-filled tombs of its own, and that's the ziggurat at Ur, which is a big site there. Queen Puabi's 3rd century BC tomb yielded a number of great finds, such as the ram's head lyre, which you see there, and the queen's headdress. These are now on display at the British Museum and at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology. And those 2 museums were the joint sponsors of the dig. So the influence on 1920s culture, coming to that. As I said, the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings at Ur produced lots of jewelry and other gold artifacts, and these were the things that people were interested in at the time. And so they influenced a movement which came to be known as the Egyptian Revival, which could be seen in jewelry, art, architecture, and design. The influences were at times abstract, as you can see here in the wallpaper, and at other times they're very literal, as in the bracelet. And some are even copies of ancient originals. The most amusing influence, I think, was the marketing at the time. As part of research that I did on the site of Ur and the collection from there, which I'll talk about in a bit, I was looking through the London Free Press articles, and I found London Free Press microfiche, and I found many, many articles, many themed Egyptian press marketing clippings from every sort of, like toothpaste, all sorts of different things. Just about a second. Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is the famous mystery writer, and she had read about the excavations at Ur, and Egypt, of course, and she wanted to travel to these places and see them for herself. And so she set out for the Near East on the Orient Express, which of course also featured very heavily in her work. And Agatha Christie came to Ur by way of Baghdad in 1928 to visit the excavations. There she met her second husband, Assistant Site Director Max Malwin, who you see here on the left. She then spent many years excavating at Ur and with her husband at his other sites in Syria. Her time spent as an archaeologist in the Near East would feature very heavily in some of her most popular titles. Noted here is The Murder in Mesopotamia, which features her most popular detective, Hercule Poirot, in a fictionalized excavation at the city of Ur. At the Museum of Ontario Archaeology, where I work currently, we have a collection of Woolley's artifacts from the excavations at Ur, which came to us directly from Leonard Woolley and the British Museum in 1933. And I didn't know exactly what they were at first. They were undocumented or had lost documentation, so I had to use my own little gray cells, as Hercule Poirot would, and eventually discovered that they had come to us as a gift. And I found in the London Free Press in 1933 an article about their arrival, which uses some very colorful, very flowery language, which is often associated with the artifacts at that time. Most noteworthy is the cockle shells, which were used as makeup holders, basically. And of them, they said, they proved that the women of the days of the patriarchs were as feminine as the women of today, who seek to beautify their natural gifts. For these cockle shells were the vanity cases of the women of Ur. They contained the cosmetics for the women who laughed and loved and loved, who laughed and lived and loved when Babylon was a dream. Kind of interesting. And of course, men would have been wearing makeup at that point as well. So, Agatha Christie also mentioned in her book, directly, this quote, which is, "Celts, stone axes, and more broken pottery with queer patterns on them than I've ever seen it all at once." And these images that you see here are basically those exact artifacts that she is talking about, which are currently in my office next to my desk, which is pretty cool. And that's how archaeology, mainly Egypt and Mesopotamia, influenced 20th century culture.